Many Muslims have made their mark on the landscape of Britain, whether at grassroots level or nationally, paving the way for others whilst unknowingly becoming role models. Pioneers will showcase these remarkable men and women, these innovators in the Muslim community. (1993) saw Bushra Nasir become the first female Muslim head teacher of a state school in the UK. She went on to be deemed one of the 25 most influential Muslims in Great Britain. She was invited to advise the then Prime Minister Tony Blair in the wake of the July 2005 London bombings and was honoured with a CBE in 2003 by Prince Charles. How did this woman, who came from humble beginnings in Lahore, Pakistan, reach such heady heights in the UK?
The thing I admire about my mum the most is the fact that she is so humble.
She's very compassionate, she's a great people person.
She's gone from strength to strength.
She's been a distinguished headmistress for many years.
She's a great advocate for her faith.
Bushra Nasir, a leading educator, a mother and inspiration. Her stoic exterior and public image were not able to tell a private story of a down-to-earth survivor who achieved a stellar career. Life for Bushra Nasir began on 9th of November 1952. She was born to Muhammad Sharif and Nazir Begum Sharif in Lahore, the capital city and the main cultural centre of the province of Punjab in Pakistan.
जब पैदा हुए तो बहुत प्यारी थी, बहुत खूबसूरत थी और हम बहुत खुश हुए.
Life, however, for Bushra at the age of 4 took an unorthodox turn. Her father, Muhammad Sharif, decided to leave Lahore and head for England, leaving behind his wife and children.
Initially, a lot of men came on their own at that time, and then a few men started to bring families over. And I remember my mother telling me that he actually wrote to her that you come over here and join me because it's very lonely as a man over here, and for another 2 years leave the children in Pakistan.
आखिर सोच के मैंने 2-3 हफ्ते बाद खत लिखा कि बच्चों को मैं नहीं छोड़ सकती, तो मैं बहुत अपसेट हुई आपका खत पढ़ के. तो उन्होंने फ़ौरन जवाब दिया कि मैंने जहाज़ नहीं था तुम्हें भेजा, सिर्फ मशवरा किया था.
After a long 4 years of living apart, Bushra was reunited with her beloved father in the UK. In 1960, aged 8, she arrived at Heathrow Airport in London with her mother and siblings.
We arrived in the middle of winter and we all of us felt really cold. I mean, in Pakistan it gets cold at night, but because during the day it's very hot, it was freezing cold and we all wanted to go back home.
Her first taste of London life was in Leighton, in the house her father had bought for them. The family lived there for the first 2 years before moving to Leytonstone in 1962. As the family became settled, the inevitable question began to be discussed: the education of the children. Bushra was enrolled in Tomlinson Primary School at the age of 8, not speaking a word of English.
I remember feeling very lost, very lonely, homesick. I used to have stomach cramps because I just missed Pakistan.
We didn't actually understand anything that was said to us.
And I remember my father actually teaching us when we went to school, the words yes and no. And I remember on the first or second day, one of the girls offered me some sweets, and I obviously wanted the sweet, and I said no, and realised that was the wrong word. So you learn by making mistakes.
Failing her 11+ exam, she missed out on the opportunity to go to grammar school, and instead in 1963 joined Connaught Secondary Manor School. Here she found her feet, but after 2 years she became frustrated with not having the choice of subject she wanted to pursue. So, at age 13, she decided to take the very grown-up decision of taking matters into her own hands.
She discussed it with my father and she said, look Dad, I want to go and see the department head, school head, to see if I can actually study science, because I love science And so basically she took the bull by the horn.
She called me to her office the next day and said, well, the only way you can do science is if you pass the 13 plus and you can go to a grammar school. And I was asked to do the next day the 13 plus exam at the grammar school. I passed, and within about 6 weeks I was transferred over.
Bushra had a clear vision of the path she wanted to take and was quite willing to make the sacrifice and endure the disruption of leaving one school behind, along with good friends she had made, to attend a new school where she knew no one, and was once again the outsider.
When we met at the school, we just clicked and we had a good understanding, and we could talk about anything and still can. And she used to invite me to her home on Saturday afternoons sometimes, and I met her family and enjoyed the spicy food her mother used to cook.
And it's funny talking about it now, but I took in curried egg sandwiches and was eating them, you know, in the packed lunchroom, and these girls saying, "Oh, you stink, you packy." I distinctly remember that.
And I simply said to Bushra, "May I have one of your curried egg sandwiches, Bushra?" And she gave me one, and I know that's an incident that Bushra does remember.
Being the only Muslim girl in the school didn't go unnoticed, but not always for the right reasons. But she kept her focus on her studies.
We'd collected our samples from a pond and we'd gone back to the laboratory, and it was in the evening, and gradually all the other students finished and they went off to get washed and changed for dinner. And Bushra, in a very pleasant, diplomatic way, encouraged me to stay until we'd examined all our specimens under the microscope. And this is really an indication of why Bushra is such a success in her life, because she goes the extra mile.
At 18, I didn't achieve the grades that I needed to get to do medicine in a London university, so my second option was to go to Queen Mary to study biology.
The 1970s was a time during which Mohammed Sharif and Nazir Begum Sharif stood out as progressive parents within the Asian community. They not only envisioned an educational future for their daughter, but thoroughly encouraged it, something other Muslim parents living in the neighbourhood were fearful of or disapproving.
They do everything to get their boys into the universities, but very few Muslims would send their girls to university. I came home and told my mother that I wanted to spend another 3 years doing a PhD, and it was to do with yeast, studying yeast, killer yeast, which was going to link with cancer research as well. And my mother said, "You're going to study yeast, the stuff I put in naan to make bread, 3 years, no way, you're going to get a job." I took up the offer of employment at the Royal London Chest Hospital, which I thought would be really, linked to my degree, would be really, really interesting, until I started the job.
उसे नफरत हुई तो वो आके कहने लगी अब क्या होगा, तो अब्बा जी ने गारंटी भी दी हुई है कि ये कोर्स करेगी। मैं क्या कोई बात नहीं, अगर कोई जुर्माना कर दे, लेकिन अगर नहीं तेरा दिल से तो फिर इसने मजबूरी से फिर टीचर ट्रेनिंग की।
With things not working out at the London Chest Hospital, Bushra again found herself in a position of serious decision-making.
Although I'd gone into teachers training half-heartedly, really, as a backup, but I was really keen for now to be very successful because I didn't have any other options.
Fate lent a helping hand, and she found herself back at her old school Connaught after a decade since leaving. On the right track now with her career, Bushra's parents suggested it was time to address the personal side of her life and consider marriage.
My mother spoke to me and she said, "We've seen, this person, what do you think?" And I said, "Do you like him 90%? And my mother said, "I like him 99%. And that was enough for me.
When I saw her photograph, I said, "Oh, she is a beautiful girl. I am lucky."
With all the necessary arrangements in place, the nikah of Bushra Sharif and Farooq Mohammed Nasir took place on a cold December day in 1975.
I think she and her husband were meant to be married. And whilst it was an arranged marriage, that relationship has gone from strength to strength.
The next 7 years saw Bushra experience the joys of motherhood, but she was now juggling a busy family life with a busy work life.
She was always there for me. She was a great mother.
She'd never drop us to school or pick us up, but I never felt like I missed out because she'd always be at home. 5 o'clock would be work time, English and maths, times tables.
Absolutely drummed those into us every night, bedtime reading.
She's a role model for all the mothers.
In spite of a hectic schedule, Bushra found her career evolving fast. A friend and ex-work colleague, Sally Walker, shares her memories of Bushra's time as a teacher.
She was always very interested in our own family lives. Every baby that was born into the school, every marriage, she, personally celebrated it with us.
Bushra's next career move took her to Plashet School. The residing head teacher's circumstances changed dramatically, and within 2 years she decided to step down from her post, leaving her position vacant.
2.5 years as a deputy in a very large school, was not the sort of ideal time to take up a headship, but I did it because of circumstances.
Well, she took over Plashet School at a difficult time. There had been changes in leadership at the school. And really made a huge difference in the time that she was there.
She had very high aspirations for the students, the girls of East Ham, and she would tell them, stories of her own background coming to England when she was 8 years old, and how she'd got a place at the grammar school, and how they also could do well for themselves.
In the new position of head teacher at a school that would now, with modern levels of assessment and league tables, be regarded as failing, she had a new vision she wanted to implement. But challenges came thick and fast from both within the school and the community.
I had to do a lot of work, and my staff had to do a lot of work with the parents to convince them to let their girls go on to post-16 education. That was a big battle for some of them. We didn't win it with all of them. By the time I left, 98% of the kids are going on to post-16 education or some form of training.
Bushra has persuaded the Asian parents to let their girls go into further education, whereas before they would stop at secondary and just stay at home, maybe get married and just become housewives. But she's given them the strength to go forward and make something of their lives.
She had what all great heads have, high expectations, and didn't accept excuses for poor performance, either from the youngsters themselves or from the staff.
She used to give so many events which everyone could have come to facilitate for everybody, so that was a really good thing about her.
And I think she was always really approachable as well. If you had any problems, you can always go to her and talk to her about it, and she'd provide quick and easy solutions.
Former staff of Bushra still residing at Plashet School, Alison Besley, Frankie Clark and Tim Kerrin, remember her fondly and describe their experiences under her headship.
When Bushra was head teacher, I remember coming here about 10 years ago and it being an incredibly welcoming place.
She gave me the position of my first ever teaching job. She taught me how to teach.
We were very trusted in what we did, and our professionalism was trusted really well.
She appointed me as year coordinator. Previous to that, I'd been head of department. I'd just had my third daughter, and I felt it was a real vote of confidence that she felt I could do a very responsible job with 3 young children.
It was now the year 2000, and whilst Plashet School was going from strength to strength, things at home had taken a turn for the worse.
My husband's health wasn't too good at that stage. He had been diagnosed with hepatitis about 6 years prior, and we decided to go to Hajj. We completed Hajj, but he was quite ill over there. And on returning, we met with his consultant, who said he actually was in liver failure, and he probably had 1 year to live if he didn't have a transplant. And that probably was the most difficult time for my husband and I, sitting there being told that news. We had to come home and tell our children, we had to tell, my parents, his parents back home, and so on. And we just went to a restaurant and just sat there and just cried. I actually wrote my resignation letter, went to the Director of Education in Newham to submit it, telling him all the reasons why I wanted to just resign my position. And he said, I'm going to be really, brutal with you. So if your husband dies, you're going to need an income for your children and for yourself.
In spite of the trauma of potentially losing her partner, Bushra took the advice of the school's governor and kept her job, and saw her husband through his ordeal to a full recovery. This was not the only positive outcome. In 2000, she received the Muslim News Awards for Excellence and the Windrush Award for being an educational high flyer. She was presented with a glass plaque for the honour by Cherie Blair at the event ceremony. This award was to be the first of many accolades, including a CBE in 2003.
You know, when she went off to the palace, she was quite adamant that it wasn't her accolade. It was actually ours as a school. She really does want other teachers to be successful and therefore go on to lead successful schools.
My personal feeling of her success is a huge amount of pride, and I'm so appreciative that she's my mother.
The 7th of July 2005 saw the capital change beyond recognition. The London bombings were a shock to the UK and an atrocity that shook the city and its people. The 4 men who carried out the 7/7 bombings were young, British and Muslim. This sparked a debate about radicalisation of Muslim youth in the UK and led to the Prime Minister at that time, Tony Blair, to turn to the Muslim community to ask for advice.
There were 25 Muslim leaders were being invited for a summit at Downing Street in order to discuss the response that needs to be made to the bombings.
So I remember when Auntie Bushra went to Downing Street, she met the Prime Minister. I came back home thinking we should come up with some nice stories. I look into the kitchen and see she's making chapati rotis. So she takes things in her stride.
It's like when she went to win the CBE and she went to visit the royal family. It just goes to show how humble she actually is.
The remainder of 2005 continued to be a positive year for Bushra and saw her win the Asian Woman of the Year award. Not only was she recognised for her personal contribution to education, but Plashet School for Girls was also acknowledged for attainment in the form of an Ofsted report, detailing majority excellent or very good grades in the main inspection of judgments. Success followed success, and the following year the school and Bushra continued to ride high. Ofsted highlighted Plashet as one of the 12 outstanding schools serving disadvantaged communities.
What it demonstrated in 2009, that there are schools, like these 12 schools, but others, that are countering the idea that just because those schools are in poor, disadvantaged communities, that they can't do well and get their youngsters to achieve well above national norms.
The highlights professionally were 3 Ofsted inspections where we were graded outstanding or the equivalent of outstanding at the time. And obviously that was something to be celebrated in the school.
This year also saw the unveiling of the Muslim Women Power List by the Equality and Human Rights Commission, which included Bushra Nasir in the top 13 list of candidates for having demonstrated significant results through strong leadership. While riding high from all the acknowledgements of success at Plashet School and the personal accolades, in 2010, life threw Bushra yet another curveball, and this time she was at the centre of misfortune.
They found a major blockage, and this blockage is actually described by cardiologists as a widowmaker. So they find it's common in men, businessmen, the ones that have their first heart attack and die. And he said, unfortunately, it's very rare in women, but you've got it.
And always I was praying from Allah, please give her good health, otherwise my family will be shattered.
Fortunately, Bushra made a quick recovery and returned to work, but after 2 years, at the age of 60 and with the health scare still fresh in her memory, decided to retire. She left school in her usual style, on a high.
I nominated Bushra for the Times Educational Supplement Headteacher of the Year award in 2012. There were a number of other nominees from across the country. I had to collate testimonials, photographs, awards, and Bushra won the award in that year.
This award also recognised how Bushra had played a key role as president of the Muslim Teachers Association in not just representing school staff, but also in challenging perceptions of young British Muslims.
So it's very mixed feelings, you know, and then, you know, the celebration of the retirement was a really big celebration with the community, with the governors, with the staff. It's very joyous.
When you know of a school's reputation and you know that it's got an iconic head teacher that is a female aspirant head teacher that has made her way and developed a school over a length of time, that's going to be attractive to somebody who, like me, who is passionate about girls' education and the empowerment of women, and the vibrancy and the aspiration and the dedication of a team was what I saw. And obviously that's exactly what you'd be delighted to inherit as a head teacher coming in.
Now retired, Bushra shows no sign of slowing down. She dedicates her time and expertise to the charity sector.
She's passionate about getting involved in different projects. The Mosaic Trust,
the mentoring,
the museum that she's setting up about immigration.
Definitely.
Things that she really can get involved with, that she knows about, and that she just really wants to get the knowledge out there with everybody else as well.
She's actually in charge of the most important committee, I think, in the Migration Museum project, the Education Committee. She has huge passionate commitment to the project and an ability to involve herself totally in its development.
Bushra is the best role model we could possibly imagine to involve in our work. She is a huge inspiration. She has achieved so much in education, and being able to benefit from her skills, from her experience, to make sure that what we're able to provide to schools really meets their need is invaluable.
Well, Bushra's been my mentor since I started Headship here in April 2013. She's been an enormous support to me, and I find that every time there's a difficult situation in school, I can talk it over with her. She's always completely discreet, but I always walk away from meetings with her feeling better than I did when the meeting began.
Alongside having left such a strong legacy in education, Bushra has left a lasting impression on former work colleagues and other professionals she has worked with over the years.
We take great pride in the successes of all our alumni, and so to see someone like Bushra as, if you like, a product of our institution become so successful and also come back and feed something back into the institution is enormously satisfying.
She's on a mission, and it's her passion and her commitment stand out in everything that she does and says.
Bushra always came across as a thoroughly professional, calm leader with huge integrity.
Having achieved so much, Bushra's family has been there every step of the way and has experienced her journey in a positive way from their own vantage points.
She's got hundreds of awards, you name it, she's got it. It's been absolutely staggering to see what she's achieved, and I'm very proud of her.
She's just always inspired me to try and just do my best, help others, and just be happy.
After winning award after award, she is so down to earth.
My mum's influenced me the most with what she's achieved, and if I could achieve a tenth of what she has done, I'd die a very happy person.
Arriving in London aged 8, unable to speak English, to becoming one of the most respected education leaders in the UK, Bushra Nasir has come a very long way. She represents women in the Muslim community who have contributed to and are shaping the world around them. She has, and no doubt will, continue to motivate and inspire a whole new generation of British Muslims. She is a Muslim pioneer.